Welcome to the Invincible Innovation Show, the podcast for changemakers. Each week, I talk to the most fascinating entrepreneurs and innovation leaders about innovation, strategy, and design. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm very happy to see you in the Invincible Innovation Live Show, a show about the future of people with tech. I'm Adima Zolcario, innovation and value creation expert, and I'll be your host. And today with me, I have Dr. Johanna Braun, innovation and sustainability expert. Hi, Johanna. Great to see you.
Hi, Adi. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here. You know, like sustainability is something that I thought I should talk about. And I was so happy for the match that we could think about it together. And I'm happy that we're talking about this very important subject. So let's start and tell me about yourself and how did you become an innovation and sustainability expert?
Yeah, so this is a journey that started a long time ago, 20 years ago, when I went to Indonesia, Jakarta, to do an internship with the UN. And I was in my early 20s, and to me, it was really a shock. Like I came from Munich, a very rich city in a very rich country. Mm-hmm. And suddenly I was exposed to the harsh reality of the people there. And I realized how privileged I was and, you know, the education I had. And so it has been a life-turning event looking back now. And so when I was there and I went back to Munich, I made a promise to myself that I want to work on making a difference, you know, and solving these problems like poverty and all the others. So this is how it all started.
Yeah, so it's a good cause to work. And when we chat before we started to talk, it seems like we both took part in the World Innovation Food Program from the UN. So I asked Johanna about Munich, and then I told her I visited like half a year ago, and we had Google had an accelerator with the food program. And she told me that she's been doing work for them for 3 years. So we both agree that this is a very good cause. And when you do something good, you know, like inside that you use your talents to do something good. So, and you know, we're just in the middle of a crisis for everyone and all over the world. If somebody watches this afterwards, we're in the middle of the COVID crisis. So how do you think innovation and specifically sustainability innovation is affected by this crisis?
So I think the whole crisis it really has turned the world upside down. Obviously in a negative sense, in terms of course, of the people suffering and some of them dying unnecessarily. But if we look at the positive side, which may sound a bit weird, but I think this whole lockdown has also shown to us that many things are possible that contribute to sustainability in a fantastic way. Like everybody was forced to go on online meetings. I mean, just like the chat we're having now, right? But also for all kinds of meetings. And you suddenly realize, I don't have to fly to Brussels to do something. This works just as well on Teams. And I really hope it stays like that. In Germany, a lot of people were joking. They said, you know, without COVID, it would have taken us 10 years to transition into this. We also can do this online kind of things. Right. And then it was like, yeah, I mean, lockdown, that's it. We have to find a solution now, right? So work-wise, we can change, you know, these type of behaviors like short-term flights, you know, for short meetings. It's nonsense, and we have to stop it, right? And another level, I think people also have realized during the crisis, and they still do, that, whoa, you know, it's really beautiful to have a clear sky. I mean, because of flights stopping and cars not moving so much anymore, or hear birds sing in the morning, and silence. So that's something that a lot of my colleagues from my European projects have shared with me. Like my colleagues in Barcelona, they're like, whoa, this is the first time that the city is without tourists. And I know it's hard, right? At the same time, people are suffering economically. But on a very personal level, people suddenly say, wow, this is the first time I went to Paguel or Sagrada Familia because there were no tourists. It's lovely to enjoy this. So you start thinking how we lead our lives and how this may be changed.
Right.
So I guess it forces us to think about many things very differently. And then if you look at the whole government level, I mean, across the world, right, we see these massive cash injections. I mean, levels of money that were unthought of in a way, how quickly they could be mobilized and stuff. And when I look at France, for example, I mean, you see there that there was a demand to link this kind of support for the industry with sustainability. So the airline industry in France, they only get the support, but they have to cut down on their domestic flights. And I think that's how it should be. I mean, obviously, I think so, right? Some people might oppose to this, but I think, yeah, we need to use COVID to do this transition into sustainable ways of living and working and building our industries. And we cannot just we cannot do this like in the crisis we had in the past, you know.
Yeah, this is something, it's a game changer for everyone. So you mentioned like two things. One is the flights, and the second one is like people are not traveling, so you have less tourists, and the flights is the same as cars, you know, people not driving to work most of the time. So it's another thing. And another thing that we could consider is that nature stays nature. So people are not going hiking that much, maybe some, but less. And I see the animals are very happy, at least. I love animals. I'm an animal activist and vegan. So it's
great. Great.
So you see lots of like good things happening, although it's like in parallel to very bad things. And it's good for us as a society, being less like frantic, driving and moving all the time and flying and just, you know, like moving around, being more close to our families and close to our home base, and for sustainability and for the environment, actually.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm writing a book, and I think it's going to be called like Harnessing the Wind of Change. And you can do it in order to create something better for yourself. Like, you cannot control the wind. It's uncontrollable. And what's going outside, you cannot control, but you can do something different within your business, within your company, within your own personal life, in order to feel like I'm doing something for better, and I'm using this change in order to do something good, right?
Yeah,
which is very important. And you see that there are like big challenges for leaders of nations and leaders of companies in order to face that. So what could you tell leaders of companies when they face like the financial crisis and so many, it's a big burden for them, and still think about like, in addition to that, you can think about the aspects of the environment and sustainability.
Yeah, I think right to what you just said. I mean, I think we have to change from thinking about this as something that is in addition to putting it at the center. And I know it's tough, right? I know it's tough because, especially in the private sector, I mean, of course, there's massive pressure, you know, and potentially people will be losing their jobs. So I know that still many of the leaders I speak with, they're more like, okay, let's focus on this now and tackle sustainability later. But to me, it's wrong. It's also wrong in the sense that a lot of companies thought that, you know, they could sort of do digital transformation later. And then they missed it, you know, they missed the point. And then suddenly they were surprised that, you know, these companies that they first laughed at, like WhatsApp. I used to be in the telco for a long time. And I remember that when I started in 2009, people never would have thought that, you know, text messages would become, you know, we would lose that kind of revenue. And they didn't believe in chat. And suddenly you see all of that revenue eroding. It's gone, right? And there's a new competitor and people, you know, already on that platform. And to me, it's very similar with sustainability. If you miss the point of putting it at the center and at the heart of your innovation strategy now, you miss a big opportunity, right? I prefer to look at things from the opportunity angle. I mean, you could also say it's a major risk. If you look at the oil industry, you have big players like BlackRock now saying you should disinvest. This will be stranded assets. The oil industry will be, you know, it will be gone. So, I think it's not something aside, but it's something you should do now and at the center.
Yeah. But like most people would tell you when you're talking about a competition between telecom and chat, this example was WhatsApp, is like this is a financial disagreement. Okay, so like two companies are fighting for the revenues and clients, and for sustainability, it's like, yeah, so who is winning the money here, right? It's like you cannot compare the quality of life when you have quiet in your ears, when you don't have sounds, or you have clear skies. How do you make it in numbers of money? Like, it's not the same, and that's why it's very hard to compare. Like, it's like apples to apples, right?
Yeah,
it's really hard.
I agree. I mean, being an economist, I do believe that in addition to me as a human being and enjoying blue skies and loving birds, and I do that, I think it's so important to put numbers on these things. Right. So we have seen over the last 10 years, and I think it's increasing now, that we have to put, euro or dollars on ecosystem services. We have to understand how much is worth the bees, pollinating our vegetables. Because if they become extinct and we have to do this manually or with, tiny drones or whatever, we need to know as a society how much this will cost. And unfortunately, as you say, as long as we don't know how much this is, it feels like, well, yeah, of course it's nice to hear birds sing that's how I feel about it.
And you see more people going toward giving numbers to these things, so we can really compare and grasp the meaning of having clean air and just living your life without technology driving your force in the daily life, just being.
Yeah, I see a lot of that. I see a lot of that both in the classical realm of major consultancies starting to, look at these issues as well, not just, again, as a side nice to have issue, but as something that is key in terms of risk or opportunity. Depends on how you look at it, and putting the numbers on it. But also if you look at the policy area, where I'm also heavily involved in right now, if you look at, the ambition of the Green Deal in Europe, I mean, it's amazing. And I know that behind the scenes, people in Brussels and elsewhere are working on, putting numbers on how much will this cost, but also how much opportunity in terms of decent jobs and progress for the environment and all of that. Yeah. So I always say it's happening, right? I've said that for the last 20 years, but what makes me so happy in a way is that I really see a major uptake on people looking at sustainability as a serious issue. Yeah. Not just the believers, so to say, right? I'm an early believer, I guess, but then, people across sectors looking this and realizing how important it is.
The one example that I have is with meat, that all the meat industry is changing, and it's going faster right now with COVID, because closed places where the meat industry is, it's more frequently and more, like in the US, lots of very, very big industry facilities were closed. And you see Beyond Meat, for example, has started, which is very, very successful, and I'm very happy about that. So it's like one example of, like, we're not taking the jobs from the farmers in the mid US, like in the mid America, but you're giving another option to do things differently. You can still create food which is tasty and good, and you still have jobs for people. They don't have to give up with what they're like. They still can support their families, which is very important. Do you have like any additional example in mind, like that one, of doing innovation that is successful?
Yeah, I mean, but just adding to what you just said, I think it's such an important point that this type of innovation also needs to be innovation that keeps people in jobs. Because, like with Beyond Meat or the Midwest farmers you just referred to, as as otherwise. There's a lot of fear out there, and I've been involved in food and agriculture tech or overall regenerative agriculture issues, and it's just a topic I love. I find it so fascinating. But when you speak to farmers, I mean, there's so much fear that they will be just left out, and they don't make a lot of money, so they're afraid of innovation. Because they feel like maybe one day, meat will just be lab grown, and this is outside of their thinking and their education. So I think it's just what you just said. It's so important. Another company that I would think of apart from Beyond Meat is Oatly. I think Oatly, the oat-based milk, is such a great example again, because again, talking about the believers and the non-believers, right? I mean, as a vegan, I guess you're also a believer in plant-based food that is healthy, good for you and the planet, right? But the majority of people out there, they're not believers. They just want to eat and drink, and they like their milk the way they're used to it. So it's so important that products like Oatly are created where people have the same experience, of their latte macchiato, whatever, without having to make a sacrifice, and that's another topic I find so important when we talk about sustainability, that we have to move away from giving people the feeling that they have to sacrifice in order to get there. But we have to arrive with, solutions and products that are tasty, that are fun, where you get rewarded for that type of behavior, that you enjoy it, that you feel you have a better quality of life. And it excites me also that Oatly is now at a 2 billion valuation.
Really?
I mean, it is, yeah.
I'm so happy.
Yeah.
In general, dairy farms is a good example of an industry that's really changed. The consumption of dairy is going down, and in all industries, people like all over the world, it's changing, and you see that people are changing it's the same thing but a different one. So the suppliers, they supply both, and you could choose between them. I think that most people that choose to go on plant-based, especially in the US, will do it from the aspect of health. They think maybe it's more healthy. And I think that when we want to create change, and innovation is always taking the change and doing something with it, or creating the change in some cases, we have to think about the objections and what will people say. Why not stay with the status quo? Right now, we're very happy with it. Why should we change?
Exactly.
And it's really important to think about it. And how do you think that companies could innovate better in these on anode days? So you said you should place it in the middle. But what could they do? They need to keep their employees, to keep their money flow. They need to, how can they think, maybe think about different products or different answers, or change their product to be more sustainable? Or
I guess it will always be a mix of both, right? I mean, especially if you have larger companies. I mean, they cannot change everything, at once. That's impossible. I've been with a large company myself for quite a while. But so you will have to innovate incrementally with the products you already have, and that's fine, right? That's the way it is. At the same time, and that's why I love to be working with startups so much these days, you have to think differently, completely differently. I mean, you have to come up with new products that did not exist before, and create opportunity. Right, so new revenue streams. If you talk about the private sector, or completely new policy approach, like the Green Deal I mentioned, to do a paradigm shift. Like, this is not about how much greenhouse gases Europe will emit less. No, this is about a whole continent changing and saying this is a Green Deal that will create different jobs and a different society, if you like. So I guess it's a mix, and you will always have to look at low-hanging fruits, obviously, right? What are the easy things, which maybe goes in a way hand in hand with the fun part that I talked about earlier for people. What is easy for you to change? If a milk tastes just as good as classical milk, okay, why not? Why don't you start with that? Nobody, I guess, not many people would become a vegan overnight, right? They just won't do it.
It seems like that.
No, small steps. So for me, and that's the same for people, like with innovation. So you take small steps, but then you should also make sure to place a couple of big bets that are really outside of your comfort zone or outside of what you're currently doing. But then you have to be ready to fail, right?
And of course, if you're doing something new, you will change, fail, and while you're changing. So it's for sure. That's why you need to know that you need to innovate in a few ways and in different projects, and one of them will be successful, and the others you just learn from, and you take it from there.
Yeah.
And when you said about like you worked in bigger companies and in smaller companies, like in startups, you see that the bigger companies, they have so much resources and knowledge and expertise and connections, network, suppliers, people they work with. And the advantages there are that they're very close to they already have a client base. Mm-hmm. So they could understand what's changed with them and just answer the new needs, because, and startups starts with like a blank slate for them. It's like, it has to be new. But when you're thinking about this change, there are so many open opportunities out there, because people still want to have fun and enjoy, and they cannot go to concerts, and they cannot go to outside and going tourists and so forth. So there is a need, and you just need to find a way to fill it, right? Because if the world is changing, people still want to laugh together, even if they can't go to startups to stand up
concerts
show.
Yeah.
So how can they do that? So when I think about this change, you can really harness it, to do things better and new things, because everybody needs new things around. So like sustainability is just one thing that you could just place in front of you and say, okay, there are so many new opportunities out there. You could do something which is good for your company and bring revenue and grow your company and still be sustainable and good for the current situation, for the current economy and the current needs of your clients or new clients sometimes.
Yeah. And I think that can be started as easy as just having a couple of conversations with players that you don't regularly speak to. So, because you just said, I mean, the large corporates, they have all these assets, right? And they've been in the game for a long time.
Yeah.
But then that also makes them blind to what's really changing. So, to sit together with startups and just listen to them, and likewise startups to listen to the experience and wisdom of someone who's been around for 100 years or 200 years. I mean, some of the companies, right?
You have that in Germany. In Israel, we don't have that.
That's right. But then you have this fantastic culture in Israel that is very much admired here of, getting things done and not thinking so much. And, Startup Nation is there for a reason, right? And we admire that, because it's fast, and you're much younger in that sense, also in not being so afraid of failing. And that is something I see as a big barrier in Europe, right? We're an old continent in a way, that's true. And we're afraid of failing, and if people are under pressure, like now with the COVID crisis, I mean, obviously people say that, of course, we need to be much more agile and fast, and then we will fail, it will be celebrated, and these fuck up nights and all these things. But I think the reality is very different. The reality is leaders don't like to fail. They don't. Yeah. So they stay away, right? They stay away from risk. So I feel that maybe, as a first step to engage with players and speak with them, and then potentially collaborate with them, of course, that you don't speak to right now, that would be something that I would think would help, to explore this whole opportunity. And it's not just startups and corporates. I mean, that's an obvious one by now, I would say. We have many, many of these type of collaborations. Yeah. But what I would love to see is, we have all these activist groups here in Europe, right? Extinction Rebellion and Fridays for Future. And of course, a bit more quiet around them right now because of COVID, but nevertheless, they are there. They're there to stay. Yeah. And I would love to see someone, a group like Extinction Rebellion, to sit down with Bayer, Monsanto, and to discuss right? And they perceive themselves as enemies, obviously.
Yeah,
I mean,
of
for
course.
sure, Extinction Rebellion will perceive someone like Bayer as the enemy, or But I still think that if we don't bring these type of opposed groups together, we will not get something that is transformative or really game changing.
Sure. I think that in general, when what I feel in COVID, that what you see, that everybody is like, we're all in the same, we in this together, we're all the same, we're all humans. Because when you talk to people, it doesn't matter. Like, I talked to an innovation leader from Bayer like a few episodes ago, and she was so nice, and there is no reason she couldn't listen. She doesn't have to agree, but she could listen to everything. And like, open innovation is something that you see growing and growing. It's not only with startups and with academy or with your clients or within the company. You see that in general, companies who are more open to change and to listen, they are more successful. So if we're talking about numbers and ROI, in general, if you're very close and hierarchical, it will be very hard for you to succeed, because it depends on the gut feeling of the leader of the company. And sometimes he's very right, and sometimes he's not, especially when the world is changing. So nobody has answers here. So when I went to Munich, like I told you half a year ago, I saw I think in one of your main parks, they had people gathering together, and they had signs, and they were so young, and they looked so lively. And when I go to my regular tech job, when you're in the big buildings, you don't have the same energy, right? It's like, it could be very funny. Like, I work with Google, so it's really fun, but it's not the same. The enthusiasm of someone who really believes in something. There is no reason why people who really want to make the change, and the changers need to think about Bayer the same as Bayer needs to think about them. So they are not enemies, both sides. There is no reason why wouldn't they talk and try to understand each other, because after all, if they agree, they represent a big market they could enter, I guess. So when you listen to people, you hear things which is not in the data. I think that the world is so into the data, like massive data and looking at numbers. And sometimes people forget just to listen, which is growing right now, I think. I feel that in COVID, people listen more because it's easier, right? Like, you don't need to drive all the way and just have this meeting. And it's like obvious. You can just contact someone and just do it together. You don't need to be that formal in a sense.
That's true.
It's kind of, because it couldn't be formal, because you see my house, I see your house. So it's
I was about to say the same. I had exactly the same thought. It has brought some intimacy, inviting someone into your house in a way. Like, right. I see your living room, you see my office, with the blue walls that I love, because I can concentrate better when I'm surrounded with blue. And sometimes, you see, obviously, in all these meetings over the last month, I mean, suddenly you see the roommate, the dog, the children of somebody just rushing through the screen. And I so much agree with you that it really has changed the way we interact with each other, because it's more human in a way. Right?
Yeah, it's strange you say it's more human when it's less human, right? Because really being human is like you and me sitting in the same room, looking in the eyes of each other, and really just having the same experience in the same surrounding. But on the other hand, it's strange because technology helped us to be less
formal, right?
Formal to the outside, right? Like, I want to show something to the outside. Although when I do these shows, it's the time that I'm getting dressed and ready. It's not like I don't go with these lipsticks all day. So
But it looks nice.
No, that's the most important part.
No, actually it's not. But I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, of course,
Yeah, it
also
is.
in these type of meetings, I mean, you will not show up in your pajamas, but it
Yeah,
does something to you that you sit in your house and I sit in my flat, right? And it's different
right.
to having met somewhere in Tel Aviv or in Munich in a fancy
Yeah,
office. And as you say, it changes.
yeah,
It changes you in a way. And also,
yeah,
I guess the same is true about the energy you described about this group of young people that you saw in the park. I mean, it's something that is for real, It's and
yeah,
to me, it's the combination of data. I mean, I've been in the tech environment for a long time, and I do believe in data, in the sense of it gives us clarity. It often shows us things we didn't know, the impact of
sure.
certain things. But at the same time, I also agree that data also can sometimes be misleading, or a single conversation with someone who you otherwise would not have been speaking with can be much more insightful, than a
Sure.
full, a lot of charts, and you look at them and they will still remain abstract because
Yeah,
it's numbers,
yeah, yeah.
right? So you
When you're
connect, at a different level, I guess.
Yeah, of course. I think that in general, when you think about research, when you're doing quantitative, qualitative examples of, like, you get the numbers and you see them, but you don't really understand why. Why people are behaving. Why do they choose this? Why did they click this? And once you talk to people, you really understand what is behind the data, what is the challenges they wanted to solve, the needs they really had, or the desires they had. And in general, I think that when you're doing research and you want to understand what's going on, either with a current project or with a new one, you really want to go into understanding people, because what we're doing, after all, is always with people. It's not with someone else. It's
Yeah.
always with people. So we're creating things for people, and it's the same thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I sometimes wonder how we could create that same link to nature, because I work with human-centered design, and I love it because, like you say, it's so important to go out and speak with people. No matter how much desk research you've done, you should speak with your users or the people who will use your product, right? And how they feel about it. But then, I sometimes wonder, how could we move to the next step in creating that link to other living beings on our planet and nature that is surrounding us, in understanding how this will, whatever we do, will have an impact. And how is this impact like? Unfortunately, we cannot speak with animals, right? It's a pity.
You could try, like,
not
if
yet.
Not yet. But I would tell you how I see it. It's like we're going to, what we can control, we're trying to do something, and then something which is much more important and big, like COVID, comes in, and this decides for us. And you can see really clearly as we talk that the thread is there. So it brings us back to the fact that we are all connected. We are not divided, although we have borders, and we're whole. We're fragile as human beings, and we need each other, and we need clean air. It doesn't matter if it's from flights and airplanes or from viruses. We need that in order to survive. So I think that the fact that the world is changing it happens all the time. Now it's like bigger, but the fact that it's changing it's here. The question is, how do we understand it? How do we see our world? How do we perceive the realities that is out there? You can always say, like, yeah, it's happened. It's not connected to me. I can do anything. I don't need to change. It doesn't matter. It can change and I'll still be here. Or you want to see, it's changed, and it gives me feedback that I'm, as a human being, I could do things different. And it could be your private life, it could be your business, it could be your company, it could be your country, but still it depends how you see change. We started about talking about the fear of change, right? We talked in the beginning, because we're not built to a fast change like we have with technology today, and surely not for these kind of crises, because we're built as human beings. Our mind is built to do what we are used to doing, right? So we cannot change our life all the time. It's too much energy to invest in order to change, right? But on the other hand, our lives are very, very fast changing in general. Now it's like more, but in general, if we are not flexible to change, we cannot really survive sometimes. And you see companies, once you had like 100, 200 years company, in like you still have them. We don't have them at all. But now a lifespan of a company is about 10 years. That's it.
I know.
Yeah. So it means that if you don't change and you don't grow and you don't create something new, you cannot be as a company. You're not successful anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You'll disappear, which is also, I guess it's also healthy, right? Again, I mean, looking at nature, that's the way it is. You grow up and then you vanish again, and such is the cycle of life.
And allow others to grow. Like when they get your space, they get your resources, and the same in business and industry. Although most companies will be like very reluctant to think that they need to give space.
No, of course. Of course. I mean, they want to remain and grow. And at the same time, working with startups that are more in the sustainability or that are in the sustainability and impact space, I have such fascinating conversations about growth and, potential exits. And the other day, one of the founders said to me, for us, bigger is not better. Better is better.
Right.
We don't want to grow. We don't want to become a unicorn. We just want to build something great. And I really like that. It really resonated with me, as much as I've also said it makes my heart sing that Oatly has a 2 billion valuation, but that's more because I see that other people are now also taking this seriously. That's why it gives me joy, right? But overall, this whole paradigm of that we have to grow and our economy has to grow, and these companies, they always, should get bigger and bigger. Maybe that's also something of the past. Who knows, right? Who knows?
Who knows? So we're almost like in the end of the very interesting discussion we have here. Do you have like some kind of a tip that you would give if somebody comes to you like from a big company and will tell you, we want to innovate and we thought about sustainability? What would be the first tip you will give him?
I guess my first question would be, are you serious about this? So provided that I have the feeling that someone is serious, right? That again, someone believes and not just thinks this is, like
nice to have,
something a nice to have, or like something that somehow suddenly seems as something that we should do too, but more, nice to have on the sidelines. So if I believe that someone truly wants this, well, I mean, then I would say, okay, let's look at all the things you're currently doing and where's the biggest opportunity that we see in this market, and where are the biggest risks? Yes, also, of course, you always have to hedge risk.
Sure.
And then let's find out, is this something that could give you a much better position to attract great people? Because the next generation, for them, it's a given. It's not something that you can just do on the sidelines. No. I mean, they really want you to be sustainable, and that to give them the feeling that, this is their purpose. This is why they go to work every day. So very often, I guess it's also an overlooked angle to a certain extent. You can call it employer branding, whatever. I just call it, being someone that is attractive to attract the best talent, right? The best talent. And again, as we said before, everything is about people in the end. As much as maybe you have a great technology, even with great technology, you need great talent to bring that to the next level, right? So I guess that's very often the first point I look at with clients. Is this something where they feel that they might lose out on talent? Could this give them an edge?
Sure.
And then, sure. Is there products to be improved? Are there some low-hanging fruits in terms of cost savings because people cut down on their travel? That's just like a super no-brainer one, right? But still,
sure.
So there's things that are obvious and short-term, and then mostly you will find out that there are things that could be that have a lot of potential, but then you will need to take the risk and go in it for the long term, because I have not seen any company or a public sector client that has done this quickly and then they were there, and also it's a continuous process. I mean, you'll never get there.
Sure. Yeah, it sounds really interesting, like doing what you are good at and your experience and doing something good at the same time in your job, which is like, I always tell my kids, you need to know your talents and your skills, and you need to know what could you do like really well. And then you need to match them into something which is called your work. And it's hard to find the right thing. So it's like, it seems like people are not talking enough about what would they do in their like career other than making money. Like that's important, but let's think about what we want to do and I think that the younger generation, as you said, they are very into meaning and what they're doing. And do they work for a good company or not? Like you see, like in the Bay Area, lots of companies which are like, are we working for the good guys or not? You see that all the time. That's for sure. And if somebody wants to contact you and just reach out and ask and maybe hire you, where can they find you?
Well, I guess LinkedIn is an easy one. That's how we connected, right? And thanks again for reaching out. I'm easygoing when it comes to this. I mean, people ping me on LinkedIn, and if I think there's value for both sides, right, to have a conversation or to look at something together, then I would say, I'm easy to reach in that sense. I'm just strict in the sense that if it's not related to sustainability, there's no point in reaching out to me because I'm not interested anymore. Going back, well, not anymore. Going back to what you just said, it's important to know what your talents are, and it's important to know where you want to put your energy. And I was in a large telco for a long time in sustainability, but then also for a long time in pure tech topics, digital transformation, startup investments. And it was great because I learned so much, but it was not related to sustainability. And that's why I left. So for me, this is a decision I took 3 years ago now. And I'm not going back, For me, it's really, I want to stay focused because it gives me joy. And
this is what you want to do with your time. Like people, when you think about most of our waking time, we're not asleep, we're at work most of the time.
Yeah.
And when you think about it this way, it makes you feel that you want to create something which is very substantial for you as in your career, in your work, in what you're doing. And I really understand that. Like working in a big company is really different than like selecting what are the challenges you want to tackle, what are the things that you want to invest in, and it's really important. I really understand that. And I want to thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Same here, Adi. So much fun. Next time you come to Munich, please let me know.
I should.
For a face-to-face conversation, or likewise. You're based in Tel Aviv, right?
Yeah, so you could come to Tel Aviv.
I was there last December. I was there. So let's see.
Next time. I could tell you one thing for sure. We have lots more tasty vegan restaurants in Tel Aviv than in Munich.
I know.
So that's the one reason that you should do this direction.
Okay. Next time I'll make it. I'll let you know. Sure. And thanks so much. This was fun.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So thanks everyone for joining us. We had a few reactions, and thanks Maya for joining us. And then we had a few people, if they would have asked questions, I would have been very happy that we'll talk about maybe next time.
Okay.
So thank you very much for joining us. See you again. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah. I'm Adima Zorkario, and you've been listening to the Invincible Innovation Podcast. Make sure to visit our website, invincibleinnovation.com, where you can learn more about our programs and my book, Innovating Through Chaos. I'll be waiting for you next week in our next episode. Thank you for listening.